Fast, focused, and fearless. Here's everything you need to know as you jumpstart your day. I'm Pauline Verzosa. Senator Risa Ontiveros and Vice President Sara Duterte clashed during a budget hearing in the Senate yesterday. Now, the Office of the Vice President was requesting a 10 million peso budget for the distribution of Duterte's children's book entitled Isang Kaibigan. Senator Ontiveros asked the Vice President about the book and the number of copies the OVP will distribute, but instead of directly answering the question, Duterte accused Ontiveros of politicizing the budget hearing. Ontiveros rebutted the Vice President's claim and insisted she was only asking about the book.
This is an example of politicizing the budget hearing through the questions of a senator. Ang problema niya kasi, nakalagay yung pangalan ko doon sa libro. At yung libro na yan, ibibigay namin doon sa mga bata. At yung mga bata na yan, may mga magulang na boboto. At yung pangalan ko ay nagkalat doon sa kung saan man ibibigay yung libro.
Madam Chair, hindi ko maintindihan yung ugali ng ating resource person. It is a simple question. Paulit-ulit na this is politicizing. Ang VP ang nagbanggit ng salitang boboto. Wala akong sinabing boboto. I'm simply asking.
Now, Vice President Sara Duterte also claimed that an impeachment complaint against her is brewing in the Congress. Duterte said lawmakers in the lower chamber are openly discussing the possibility of impeaching her. She insisted she's not worried about this threat since she did not want to run as vice president in the first place. The vice president also revealed the Marcos siblings, President Bongbong and Senator Amy, pleaded her to run as the president's running mate. She said she only accepted their offer to sustain the big projects of her father, former President Rodrigo Duterte.
Lumapit na sa akin yung magkapatid na Marcos. Sabi nila, hindi kami mananalo kung hindi mo tutulungan kami sa Mindanao at sa Visayas. Sabi ko sa kanila, okay, sige, dahil maraming big ticket projects si Pangulong Duterte sa Davao City, sa Mindanao at sa ibang lugar pa ng ating bansa na gusto nating mapatuloy. Kaya nga, di ba, tumakbo kami on the platform of unity and continuity na hindi natin nakikita ngayon na saan na yung mga big ticket projects. Wala na lahat. Unappropriated.
Meantime, maritime security expert Ray Powell says China's long-standing ambition is to assert control over most of the West Philippine Sea, including the Escoda or Sabina Shoal. Here's an excerpt from his interview on Storycon.
What is the importance of Sabina or Escoda Shoal, and why are the Philippines and China, having a big tussle over it?
And by the way,
Sure.
before I heard about it from the news, it was Ray Powell. I got it from Ray Powell first.
That's what I do. This has been coming for a while, I think. China has had vessels at Sabina Shoal intermittently for years. We've tracked them. They've mostly been passively asserting their sovereignty by parking maritime militia vessels there. We call it rafting, where they take them, they tie them all together, and they just sit there for months on end. And that's just China's way to assert their sovereignty very quietly and passively, and it's almost like a floating outpost. And so those have been there for quite a long time, and we've covered it at Sea Light over the years. What happened, I think, more recently was, of course, the Philippines went out and did a survey and believed that it found evidence of some preliminary island building kinds of activities at Sabina Shoal, with some dead coral being dumped, appearing to raise the level of the shoal. The Philippines was concerned that that might lead to island building over time, and so they took the BRP's Teresa Magbanwa, a 97-meter Philippine Coast Guard ship, and they anchored in the middle of the shoal to do two things, I think. One is to remind China that this is in the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, and the Philippines didn't intend to simply allow China to lay claim to the shoal in this way, and also to kind of keep an eye on China to make sure that they weren't actually dumping coral and trying to do reclamation activities. So that happened in April, is when the Teresa Magbanwa showed up. And then over time, it became very clear that China was very agitated about this, and they would refer to the Teresa McBanwa in similar terms as it talks about the BRP Sierra Madre out at Ionian Shoal, right? They would talk about it as being like a quasi grounding, and began to demand its removal. And then last week, we started to see these messages coming out of their propaganda outlets like the Global Times or their spokespeople talking about the fact that they believe that the other 97-meter ship, the Motor Aquino, was going to go out and replace Teresa McBanwa, and they started acting like they weren't going to allow it. They talked about taking resolute measures and other sort of words like that.
Let's now take a quick look at today's other headlines. In the Philippine Star, the Marcos administration has finalized its senatorial bets for the 2025 polls. Now, these include Tito Soto, Panfilo Lacson, Lito Lapid, Abi Binay, Amy Marcos, and Pia Cayetano, as well as Camille Villar, Francis Tolentino, Manny Pacquiao, Benhur Abalos, Bong Revilla, and Erwin Tulfo. Meanwhile, in business world, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas may have room for 2 more rate cuts this year. Metrobank chief economist Nicolas Antonio Mapa says they are holding on to their 2+1 rate cut call for 2024. He explained that the main argument for rates to slip to 5% by mid-2025 lies in the outlook for growth and inflation. Now, the Finance Department defends again its order for Philhealth to return its 90 billion pesos excess funds. This as Philhealth is mandated to transfer 10 billion pesos of its untapped funds to the government today. During a Senate hearing, Philhealth said if it's up to them, they will use the untapped funds to improve their services to their members. The DOF insisted that the transfer of excess funds help the government's other projects and responsibilities. Deputy Treasurer Eduardo Mayrino III said the money was used to finally pay for the pandemic health workers' allowance.
It is because of the additional resources represented by the remittance of the initial 20 billion that this was made possible within the year. Matupad ang pangako ng gobyerno sa ating mga healthcare workers.
Dr. Antonio Dance from the Science and Technology Department says the transfer of Philhealth funds is both immoral and illegal. Here's an excerpt from his interview on The Big Story.
The community, composed of more than 60 professional medical organizations, are up in arms against this. Tell us why.
Well, there are 2 basic reasons. No? First, and probably more important, we think it's immoral. And second, it's illegal. So first, yung immorality niya, no? There are so many people suffering because of, need for funds for healthcare. Napakarami pong naghihirap. Studies show na half of our healthcare expenses are shouldered from the pockets of patients. That's very high, 50%. We're the 3rd highest in the Southeast Asian region. Natalo lang tayo ng Cambodia and Myanmar. So 50% represents a lot of suffering of Filipinos. No? It's also immoral kasi, excuse me, Philhealth is an insurance fund. Parang ano yan, it's a sign of solidarity among Filipino citizens. No? Parang paluwagan, no? We each pay a premium every year para if something happens to some of us, they can use this fund, this pool of funds na nag-ambagan tayo. So kung ang government actually pays for the premiums, yung ambag ng mga mahihirap, walang trabaho, mga disabled, senior citizens. So pag tinanggal nila yan, that's their subsidy, the premium of these people who cannot pay. Then who is left shouldering the bill for healthcare? Di ba? E di yung formal sector, those who are actually paying. And many people in the formal sector, naghihirap din. Ang ating premium is now 5% of our salaries. So that's the first. It's very immoral. The second is it's illegal because the Universal Healthcare Act protects the insurance nature of Philhealth. How does it protect that? Sinasabi doon, it shows there, hindi yan tulad ng DPWH budget or DTI budget na pag may natira, you can get it back. It's an insurance fund. So the Universal Healthcare Act specifically states none of its reserve funds can go back to the national treasury.
And those are the top stories of the hour. Join us later at 9 a.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. I'm Pauline Verzosa. We are One News.